Hello and welcome. I am Excellite, and this is my podcast. Today, I have with me, per usual lately, Rob. Hello, Rob.
Hello, JC. How are you?
I'm living each day, day by day. How are you? The
I'm living
same?
the dream. Living the dream. Living the dream.
That's what you often say. Today, our subject is going to be about missing civilizations, which I'm pretty excited about, Rob.
So am I. We've got some that maybe people haven't heard of.
Yes, and I am going to talk about one that has a special connection. I have a special connection to, which sounds weird, but stick with me, people. Before we get started, I'd like to say please like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you are not already subscribed, please think
Why?
about doing so because, yeah, why not? What could possibly be wrong with you? If you would like to be notified of my content when it goes live, go ahead and ring that bell. And I would like to say that I was in the hospital again last week, and I'd like to thank Rob for putting up some content for me. And I thought it was really, really good, Rob.
Thank you.
I told you already, but I'm going to say it again. It was probably my favorite of yours.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed doing it.
And Rob this week has had a heart attack. So we are grateful that neither Rob nor I are communicating today through a Ouija board. It's been a very
Oh
lucky
dear.
week for us, Rob.
Certainly has.
I feel like our lives are running out. I'm down to I have 8 used probably by now.
I think I'm in the minus ones. I don't know.
You owe some lives. Um, I that was very scary, and I hope you don't do that to me again.
Okay, I'll try not to.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, you guys. Is there anything else you want to say to anybody, Rob, before we start?
Um, no, I'm okay. I'm okay.
Okay.
Is that fan bothering you?
No, I
Can you
can't hear
hear?
it.
Oh, that's good.
Can you hear the fan here?
No,
Okay.
I can
I
hear
have
someone
so many
running.
fans.
Exactly. I can hear them.
Anyway, uh, do you want to start?
Yeah, we'll do.
Okay.
Everybody will have to excuse my pronunciation of some of these places. It's the Khmer Empire. It's where was it? It's across Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand. When did it exist? 800 to 400, 800 to 1400 AD. This the strengths of this civilization: advanced water system, strong economically, and they had a lot of natural resources. Water is the life stream of any civilization, and the Khmer Empire completely embraced it and used it to its advantage. The Khmer incorporated an extensive water network into their civilization to allow the capital city of Angkor to flourish on the banks of the Mekong River. I've heard of the Mekong River.
Mm-hmm.
Briefly, the largest city in the world.
Hey, Rob, can I tell you something?
Certainly.
Something is scratching.
Oh, it's my bloody beard.
Oh, that beautiful, beautiful beard. When Rob was in the hospital, he was told how beautiful his beard is.
Yeah. Is it still
Yeah, it's
scratching?
scratching. Yeah. You
What about,
braid that thing.
what about now?
No, that's better. You put it in your mouth. Okay.
No, but I feel like a tree the way I'm sat.
Just braid it. Put some lovely, lovely beads in it.
What about now? Can you hear it now?
Uh, no.
Right. Anyway, it's on the banks of the Mekong River, and it was briefly the largest city in the world. It covered 1,000 square kilometres,
Wow.
and it's believed to have accommodated around 1 million people.
Hmm.
The city grew out of the remains of the Funan, Funan, and Cheyenne empires, and it was a similar size to many of the modern cities in the world today. The advanced water system contained a network of channels and reservoirs that utilised the monsoon climate and collected water for use in the dry seasons. Basically, they think that the reason that the reason that is that your bed?
It was. Yes, it was my beard. Sorry. Oh, I was trying to quiet it.
They think that the reason that it disappeared was that it grew too big, and it grew and it started to impact on other civilizations at the time, and there was a huge battle, and they all perished, and then it was
A
just,
million people?
yeah, just
Ooh.
over, obviously not in one, they didn't all die in one battle, but obviously they lost lots and lots of people, and they just dwindled and dwindled and dwindled and just fell away, and then the city was in ruins now.
Hmm.
There are actually ruins where the city is.
Really?
Yeah. And
I
if you
wanted to be an
fancy,
archaeologist so bad.
it's I think a lot of these Vietnam films and the when not Vietnam films, but when they do the tourist films and the programs, a lot of the um, ruins that you see are from the Khmer Empire.
Really?
Yeah.
Hmm. Interesting.
No, I'm not, by the way.
Yes, you are. Um, I would like to. Uh, my husband and I would like to go to Vietnam someday. His father served in Vietnam, and we would like to go see where he was. You know.
Yeah.
And I love Vietnamese food, but I was telling you the other day, I'm allergic to something. Like maybe they, like I said, maybe they use fish oil a lot, and in which case I'm allergic to fish. So it's very good though. If you get a chance, you've never had Vietnamese food, try it. It's great. Um, that's interesting that a million people just disappeared. Have they
Yeah.
found like, have they found lots and lots of bones, or just the remains of the city?
Just remains of the city,
Oh,
and bits of pottery and things like that. And when they've um, the archaeologists, they've um, done whatever when they dug down, they found the channels for the water system
oh.
and all the reservoirs and stuff like that. So um, very much like when I read it, it seemed because Atlantis as well we were talking about. They water is a key, and the same with Atlantis that it supposedly had some brilliant water systems, and that's what brought brought the city to life. And it was very similar, even though obviously Atlantis is still out there somewhere.
Right.
I'm talking about the words of Plato, who described the city
That's
and the water
right.
system. It was very similar, I think.
That's right. Plato writes about Atlantis, where it was, but apparently not well enough to help us find it. But every couple of years or so, somebody thinks they have found it, and then it turns out not to be. One of the theories is that they were hit by a tsunami, a huge tsunami that just wiped
Wipe
everybody
them
out to
out.
sea.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to do one. I'm going to talk about the Mayans.
Mm.
And um, everybody's belief is, that the Mayan civilization disappeared. But I got some news for you. All right, here we go. The Mayan civilization is arguably the most well-known, one of the most well-known civilizations to disappear, and one of the New World's most advanced pre-Columbian civilization. The Maya carved huge stone cities into the jungles of southern Mexico and Central America. They had elaborate plazas, palaces, pyramid temples, courts for balls. They were known for their hieroglyphic abilities. They made the calendar that lasted for, well, what, up until a few years ago, right? And that was in 2012. And then that was when the world was supposed to come to an end one of the times. But that's how far that um, scientists have said that the Mayan calendar went, although the Mayan calendar wasn't really based on like what our modern day calendar is. So it really wouldn't have been 2012. They used astronomy when they built their pyramids.
Yeah.
And a lot of their pyramids completely line up and face different planets in the sky and do different things for different seasons when there are different planets in the sky and there's shadows, that come through and there's light that comes through, and it's uh, it's stunning, really, to think that this this tribe, it's a tribe. It has no modern convenience like we know, right? Like nothing. Yet it also had the amazing ability to um, have use water, and the the science and the math it took to create these pyramids and these buildings to line up with a little tiny hole, a half a mile away is just mind bending to me. I always say, if I had been in a tribe and people were relying on me, we would have died because I would have been chasing around lightning. Looking, that's how it would have made fire, and somebody would have had to keep that fire going for another 1,000 years. Because it's just, it's so amazing. So that's why a lot of people think these tribes had the help of aliens.
ET. Mm.
Right. So the Mayan reached the peak of their influence during the so-called Classic period, which is from 250 AD to 900 AD. But at the end of the Classic period, one of history's great enigmas, this populace suddenly deposed its kings. They abandoned their cities. They ceased with all technical innovation at all, period. It just stops right there. Some people think it was because of drought. Some people think it was because of warring nations, that they had been overtaken by other tribes around them. There's a movie by Mel Gibson. I can't think of what the name of the movie is. But his theory is that when people came and discovered the area, help me, what is the word for people who discover new areas?
Um, Taurus.
No, like
um,
like Oh, Tracy. Robb.
Oh.
Oh my God. Okay, so I'm stupid today, and it's Joshua. What is the name for people who discover new lands?
Explorers.
Explorers, thank you. Josh just looked at me with one of those looks like, what? Anyway, when the explorers came, that they exposed them to diseases, smallpox, and brought rats that brought the plague, and all that stuff, and that could be why, they died or left. However, most, as it turns out, most of the population just dispersed. They emerged to different tribes, different civilizations, and as of today, millions of people still speak the Mayan language, the Mayan descendants, and they continue to inhabit those areas today, which is amazing. It's almost like spotting a unicorn if you're a Mayan. I mean, that's that's pretty special.
It's almost like what about a unicorn?
Like spotting a it's like spotting a unicorn. I would never have thought I could go to travel to someplace and find just many people who are descendants from Mayans, because I was always raised being told that they just disappeared off the planet. And they didn't. They didn't, Rob. Of course not. They were too smart for that.
They all were taken up in UFOs.
Probably. That's probably true. They went back home.
But
But
do
weren't
you
they
think that?
brilliant? Can you imagine?
Well, they believe that of some of the programs and stuff that I've read that they some of the hieroglyphics were very similar to the hieroglyphics in Egypt.
Yes. Yes, they had a lot of things in common. So many things in common with things in Egypt.
And don't the pyramids line up
Yes.
with the Great Pyramids in Giza and places like that?
Yeah. And a lot of their astronomy things are the exact same.
Yeah.
So that I'm not going to get into like aliens and stuff like that in this podcast, but someday we should, because that is incredible. I mean, like I'm saying, like let's say that I was in a tribe with you, Rob.
Yeah.
And we cut down a tree and had to move it. I'd be like, ugh, and say, fuck it, and then leave the tree there. I mean, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't. Would I? Would I? Would the mother of what is it? The necessity is the mother of invention. Would you think we can do better? But I think I would. If I did that, I would be concentrated on stuff I needed here in the village, not stuff that has this incredible mathematical ability that they have. That, I mean, it's just mind blowing.
What's that got to do with cutting down trees?
What?
What's that got to do with cutting down trees?
No, that's where I would have been. I would have been like, I can't figure out how to move this tree. And these guys are like, they're just building these pyramids.
Oh, I see what you mean. I get you now. Follow you.
And you can see the light shine through in a building a mile away through a hole the size of like like a 50-cent piece. And that amount of math is just, I mean, my God. And then not only that, but then you have to build it, and then you have to build it by carving it.
Yeah, that
And
always.
generations.
Yeah, that always gets me. How they can take a huge lump of rock or a bit of a mountain and carve it into some kind of beautiful temple. That
Yeah.
that is
And to pass
mind blowing.
that, yeah. to pass that desire down through generations and generations and generations, fathers, maybe mothers, I don't know, taking their children and teaching them how to do it so that because they were going to have to be the ones that carried on that tradition. Their lifespans weren't really that long back then.
Yeah.
Interesting. Anyway, I just had to say, I spent this whole time calling myself stupid. I don't know
You're
if
not
I would have
stupid.
invented the wheel. Who
Well,
knows?
you're not stupid.
Thank you.
But they believe there's some people that believe that, like the Egyptians and the Mayans, they had some kind of electricity. The pyramids were in some way able to power. They could make batteries and they could power lights, and maybe we don't give them enough credit.
Oh, I'm giving them
Um,
all the credit in the world. There was a pyramid found that was the whole top of it was copper,
yes.
and they thought it was probably to conduct. You're scratching.
Sorry.
Probably to conduct, some sort of, like you said, electrical current.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I think a lot of people don't give them enough credit.
And how'd they figure that out? Like, how many people got struck by lightning before they were like, holy shit, we can use that? Excellent.
Mm.
We're putting somebody on top of the pyramid. It's your turn. Stand there holding this. See how it goes.
Well, my next one's next door to yours.
Is it?
Yeah. Do you want me to do it yet? Or are you still
Yeah.
Tiwanaku or Tiwanakan or however you say it? This civilization proved you didn't need an army to survive. It was based in Bolivia, which wasn't a million miles away.
Right.
They existed 500 to 900 years AD.
Hmm.
They had good agricultural location, construction techniques, and they were expert farmers. They had no writing system. They overused their farming land and had no military presence. The most prominent civilizations hang on. The most prominent civilization to come out of Peru was the Incas, whose
Hmm.
culture flourished from approximately 1200 AD until the Spanish conquerors in 1532. However, before the Incas came, the Tiwanaku tribes who colonized both Chile and Peru. I'm making words up here. Oh, I'm trying not to scratch. Stop telling me off.
You just realized that nobody heard me say anything, right?
I've got my arms like a tree holding this stupid microphone up.
Sorry.
Do me a favour. I'm going to tell you what. Talk for a minute about
Okay.
something. I'm going to try something.
Okay,
I'm
I'll
not.
talk about something. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the Indus culture. And the Indus began building settlements in what is now present day India and Pakistan, probably as early as 8,000 years ago. And that makes them one of the earliest known civilizations. By the third millennium BC, they occupied over 386,000 square miles of territory, which is much more than their better known counterparts in Egypt and Mesopotamia, and accounted for an estimated 10% of the world's population, which is astounding. There weren't that many people alive back then, but think of that. 10%.
Are
They
you
also
okay to talk
developed.
for a little bit longer?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, just give me a couple more minutes. By the way, can I just tell everybody a funny story and you?
Yes, I
Yesterday,
guess.
um, I'm quite a hairy person, as you probably all know now. But I was looking down at my chest, and they had to shave me, didn't they? To put the little sticky things on to do when I had my heart attack. And
Okay.
now I look like I've got the mange. I've got patches that are starting to grow back, and it's not very comfortable. Hello? Is anyone there? Not twice for yes and once for no. Right, I'm going. I'll be back in a minute. I'll
I
leave
don't
you.
know. I don't know why you said, "Can I tell them a funny story about you?" And then you told them that story. I didn't shame you.
Well, no. That would be one big fucking razor. Sorry, monetize gone. Right, I'm going. I've got to sort my beard out.
You have the mange.
I'm
Oh
going.
my
I'm
god.
going. I'll be back
Okay,
in a minute.
goodbye. Oh my god. Can't get over it. Okay, I gotta move on. They also developed a writing script that is still yet to be deciphered, which is pretty amazing. And their cities contained sanitation systems that remained unequaled until the Romans, which is also pretty amazing. At around 1900 BC, the Indus, also known as the Indus Valley or Harappa civilization, went into a freefall. The population abandoned their cities and purportedly migrated to the southeast. Originally, scholars believed that so an Aryan invasion from the north. If we let me translate that for you. People who weren't of that, like say people from like Scandinavia, being as that Aryan is the word for white generally. An Aryan invasion from the north brought about the Indus collapse, but that theory is no longer in vogue, which makes sense because then that area would still probably be inhabited by, Norwegian looking people or, maybe combination if people came back and, married and everything. Um, Recent research instead suggests that the monsoon cycle essentially stopped for 2 centuries, making agriculture impossible. And there could have been other factors such as earthquakes or outbreaks of malaria or cholera that could have played a role. And of course, ultimately, we really have no idea. But it does make sense that they could probably tell if there was no rain cycles and for how long simply by digging, along cliffs or down in the dirt. They could see the levels, and you know that is amazing that it stops raining and it wipes out 10% of the world's population. Stopped raining for a long time, and like like Rob was saying earlier, every civilization, even today, depends so much on water. Um, that P.S. Let's take care of the water. We don't want we don't want somebody, an archaeologist, finding us someday, being like, yeah, they didn't have any water. Rob, are you there yet? Are you still shaving your beard? Rob's shaving his beard. All right. Um, I can move on if you're there, Rob. I can move on to a different.
Hello, I'm back.
Okay.
Right, I've damped it down.
Okay.
So if
Okay.
you hear a funny noise, that's probably me being electrocuted.
It'll be good for your heart.
Apparently so.
Good beating. All right. Well, you just missed my whole story about this whole civilization, and they were also a civilization. They figure um, disappeared because of a lack of water. They depended on the monsoon seasons, and they didn't have rain. And I don't know if people know this, but monsoons happen in Arizona every year.
Ah,
People always say like Arizona's a dry heat. Oh, it's at least it's a dry heat. First off, I don't care. It doesn't make a difference. Wet, dry is miserable. But during the most of the summer, it is a wet heat in Arizona because they have monsoon season, which brings a lot of rain, and rain doesn't cool down in Arizona. It's like turning on it's 115 degrees out. When the rain hits the ground, it just steams. It's just steamy. And then, of course, it brings huge dust storms, which are called haboobs. And and it's just
who's boobs?
they're haboobs.
Boobs.
Huz,
Hus,
not mine.
hus boobs.
Yes, huz. We are 14 years old. Um. Anyway, so if that same thing happened in Arizona and they lost the monsoon season, they would be in trouble as well. And Joyce says it's been very light this year, so anyway, that's the only time you get rain. But when I first moved down there, we were in a movie theater. We'd only lived there for a couple days, and I had left Washington, and it was snowing, and we moved to Arizona in October, and we had all of our summer clothes packed up in the moving truck. We hit Arizona, and it was a record hot year. It was 116 the day we got to southern Arizona. Northern Arizona is not the same. Northern Arizona is like a different state. It has pine trees and they have ski lodges, and it's completely different, which I don't think a lot of people picture. They think the whole place is just a desert, and it's not.
Mm.
So we came down through the mountains, and it was snowing up there too. And you drive down, 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 down. There's pine trees, and it's green and lush and beautiful. And then you go, boom, desert and cactus, and there's a distinct line. Like, it's incredible. And anyway, it was a shocking experience for me, and I hated it. But we went to the movies, and I saw that it was raining. I was like, oh, thank God, it's going to cool down. And I walked out into a sauna, and literally couldn't breathe. Like, was going, my asthma was like, I ain't down for this. So there you go. You learn something new every day, Rob.
That's it. So, do you want me to carry on with my?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Stop me from talking, please.
So anyway, this was before the Incas. They colonized both Chile and Peru. They're a multi-ethnic society who settled in the upper reaches of the Andes. They are remembered for the many remarkable monuments which still stand today, and these are the ones that always appear on the UFO programs, because basically they have taken the tops of mountains, and I mean the tops of mountains, and leveled them.
Right.
And there is no, obviously, if you take the top of a mountain, that rubble and all the stuff that made up the mountain is nowhere to be seen. And they have leveled them, and they are like sea. They're as level as the sea, basically. And they don't know how they've done it. They just do not know how. They've got these massive, massive mountains that have pretty much been cut in half, that are just flat now, just completely flat. And the most remarkable monuments are still there today. The most famous of these was the, you'll have to excuse my pronunciation, Kalasa Sassi Temple, and the step pyramids of Alcapana, which were used as temples and observatories respectively, as well as these impressive structures, the Tiwanaku also had underground drainage and paved streets, and cities were planned in a grid system. So they were very, very.
Wow.
And these came just before the Incas. So maybe the Incas built on this idea,
Oh,
and took
yeah.
it to the next level. Over
Huh.
10,000 people lived in the capital city, which is believed to be one of the oldest cities in the world. Their society was aided by the base of the rich Titicaca basin.
What was
You
that
know,
again?
Titicaca.
Oh,
Titicana.
okay. Okay.
There's too many boobs and titty cans for my liking in this sentence.
How old
By
are
the
we?
way,
How old are we?
if there's anyone from this part of the world, and we're crucifying the names of these cities and tribes, I apologise. From the,
I think they disappeared though.
you never know. Could be people out there that claim to be from these places. You never know.
You never know.
Da, da, da.
All right. Okay. So are you done? Is that what the da 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 means?
No, I'm just
Oh,
making
okay.
doing it for effect.
Oh. Oh. Okay. So that was chilling.
Which, thank you, which had the right mix of rainfall, food sources, and land. Subsequently, the Ticahuano became expert farmers and pioneers, a method of farming known as flooded raised field agriculture, which used the effective system of irrigation. It's like what I think it's like what they call the paddy fields now, where they grow the rice, because that's what they use, raised fields that have basically have a small amount of water in, don't they? Did you know that?
Yes, I do know that. Um, you know, my father-in-law served in Vietnam,
Yeah.
so yes, I know all about them.
This well-fed population allowed the Tiwanaku to expand into many other areas of South America. The civilization was at its peak of its powers in the 8th century, but mysteriously ended in the 9th century. No one is quite sure why they disappeared, but um, it's believed that they, as well as similar cultures known as the Wari, were victims of a dramatic shift in climate, which devastated crops and caused mass starvation. As there was no writing system and never engaged in war, the Spanish never say this word,
Conquistadors.
conquistadors, they were never really, they were never truly, they will never truly be a forgotten civilization. But because, like I think you mentioned it before, there was no written word as such. We just have to wonder and wonder why it was either they all starved to death or they're all living on the moon on Mars.
Or Mars. It's
Yeah,
possible.
well,
You know, it's so strange. I love these. This is the kind of stuff that fascinates me. This is why
yeah.
I want to be an archaeologist.
Excuse me.
I would I would love to study this kind of thing. Okay, so and by the way, talking about Egypt, I was watching a documentary that was talking about the very first known drawings of the Sphinx in Egypt, and there were mountains behind it, not pyramids, but mountains, and there no longer is. Where'd they go?
Mm-hmm.
Because they were talking about mountains, and I was like, oh yeah, that reminds me. Okay, here we go. The Anasazi, which um, I'm familiar with because they were in Arizona. In the dry four corners of the region of the present-day United States, four corners, which is what? Colorado, Arizona, Utah, and New Mexico? Yes, I think that's it. If it's not, don't yell at me. I'm on a really strong antibiotic and it's killing my brain cells by the minute. Um, I just feel them falling out. The Anasazi built spectacular stone dwellings into the sides of cliffs during the 12th and 13th centuries, which I have seen personally, and it's amazing. Some of which contained hundreds of rooms. They would carve these into the cliffs. They were obviously a cliff dwelling society, which
Oh, I've seen.
is
Oh, it's crazy.
incredibly smart if you think about um, an army and protecting yourself against warring tribes, because they could not attack you from below, and unless they were going to repel somehow down, they couldn't even attack you from above. So they really had a dominance over this region.
Yeah.
No other U.S. building would be taller than these structures until the construction of the first skyscrapers in the 1800s, almost the 1900s. Yet the cliff dwellings did not remain occupied for long, and in the end, it wasn't very pretty. Researchers have uncovered signs of massacres and cannibalism amongst themselves, as well as evidence of deforestation, water management problems, and crippling long term drought that many believe precipitated the slide into violence. Religious and political upheaval began, akin to what Europe faced during the Protestant Reformation, and that may have added to the problems as well, which ultimately forced the Anasazi to abandon their homeland by 1300 AD, and then they fled south. Their modern day descendants include the Hopi and the Zuni peoples, some of whom consider the term Anasazi offensive, preferring instead to say ancestral or ancient Puebloans. I wonder why they find it offensive is because they seem to have been so violent and maybe went mad.
Well, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, mm, interesting. So if you ever get the chance, if anybody ever gets a chance and visits Arizona and you get the chance to go, they have Anasazi petro what are they called, petroglyphs,
yeah.
that are amazing. You'll you'll be amazed. You'll be stunned. It's the whole thing. If you see the cliffside dwellings, you're just not gonna believe it. It's really amazing, and the fact that that civilization fell is so hard to believe, considering, like I said, they were set up so well to succeed. But if their water was being contaminated, maybe they didn't have it separated from waste water, and there was a drought and all that, then
Yeah.
you can't fight that.
No, you can't.
All right, you're next.
Right. I don't know how to say this word. It's Etria. Etruria.
I don't know.
Etruria.
Yes.
Basically, well, that's what they were called anyway. Before the Romans, Italy was occupied by a civilization just as advanced. They were based in central Italy. They existed 800 to 250 years before Christ, BC. They were construction experts. They were involved in the iron and copper trade and urban planning. Their
Hmm.
weaknesses were they had a poor army, their territory was desirable to invaders, and it was local to Rome. And
Oh.
an amazing fact about these, they invented the idea of armed combat for sport, or as we more commonly know them, gladiators.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, I think everybody thinks the Romans did.
no, they didn't. It was these happy little people.
Huh.
Excuse
Interesting.
me. Their story begins in the post-Iron Age Italy, originally inhabiting an area which we know today as Tuscany.
Oh.
The ancient Etruria grew in the 9th and 8th centuries BC thanks to the rich stream of mineral ores, strong agriculture, and plentiful timber resources. The civilization reached the height of its powers in the 6th century BC when 12 states were allied, aligned in the Etruscan League. I don't know if that's like a football league.
Probably. Probably.
Their main cities, the main cities were Tarquini, Volci, and Vale, whose economy was based on a thriving copper and iron trade with the Greeks and the Calf.
So were they miners?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
being the first real major settlement on the Italian peninsula, they became the basis of the civilization in late antiquity to follow. They were the first people to depose a king and would be ruled by a intelligent. Sorry, they were. Let me just go back, so it doesn't add up. This they were to depose. Depose. I don't know what's wrong with me. Yeah, everybody have to excuse me this morning. I've had an heart attack.
Yes. I think
They,
I think we can excuse you.
basically, they got rid of the king and they were ruled by a parliament.
Really?
Their agriculture and construction techniques arguably influenced the Romans as much as the Greeks did. Their homes were made from mud brick baked in the hot Mediterranean sun, mixed with wood and stone. And some of the upper stories, these houses, and some even had upper stories. These homes,
Oh.
which were advanced for their time, were set into the type of rectangular urban planning and were accompanied by roads and bridges
Wow.
and they used arches and vaults construction techniques.
Really?
Even the Latin alphabet and the
Wow.
Roman toga have their origins with the Etruscan people.
That is very interesting because we give a lot more credit to the Romans, don't we? For creating this and using the Latin alphabet and creating waterways and the way they ran their government. I
Yeah,
mean, to this day, most major countries have some sort of government really based on kind of how the Romans had started it, you know?
yeah. Well, listen to this. This is interesting as well. Etruria is also known for its maritime prowess, and as they explored the Adriatic and Aegean seas, establishing colonies on Corsica, Sardinia, and even in Spain. The Romans, a civilization that owed so much to the Etruscans, proved to be their downfall. The growing
Right.
Roman military juggernaut proved basically just took over them and just either took, because the way the Romans used to work, they used to kill anyone that deposed them and then give the people the opportunity to join their armies. And if they didn't want to
Oh,
do that, then they just used to kill you.
oh. And they didn't enslave what, women and children?
Mostly the men for their armies. So
Hmm.
a lot of people think that the Roman army was just made up of Romans, but it wasn't.
Right.
It was made up
Oh,
of um, people from all over Europe
wow.
and Africa.
Wow.
I mean, if
And
anyone's
go ahead.
if anyone's seen the film Gladiator with Russell Crowe, I don't know if anyone. Well, there will be people who've seen the film. Have you seen the film, Chase?
I have seen the film, but it was a long time ago. It's one of my husband's favorites.
If you remember, um, there are different people from everywhere. There's the Germanic people, and there's people from Europe, and there's people from Africa who are in the Roman army.
Yeah. Wow. They just swallowed him up, and the theory is right that the downfall of the Roman Empire was that they made pipes out of lead for their water systems, their drinking water, and they died from lead poisoning.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the Roman soldiers had never ever seen Rome.
Wow. Huh.
They'd never seen Rome.
And this missing people would be desirable simply by location and being close to the sea, which is obviously desirable.
Yeah.
You want to have that land for exporting, importing, fishing.
Well, it says here that they were annexed into the new Roman Republic in 250 BC.
Wow.
Do you know what I felt? I don't know. Maybe it's just my religious mind, but have you noticed that so much happened just before or just after the BC AD? Do you not find that?
Jeremy has a whole theory on this. He should do a podcast. Not a theory, actually. He has done a lot of research, a lot of scientists and geologists and help me. What are the people that dig through stuff? I just said I wanted to be one.
Archaeologist.
Thank you. See, the word archaeologist just fell out of my brain. Anyway, they have a theory as to why there was such a huge growth spurt in creation of things that spanned, like, it wasn't that long between creating the kinds of things that the Romans did and like the first airplane. If you take a chunk out of history, you know what I mean? Because there's thousands and thousands and millions of years, but so many things happen in such a short time that they have a theory as to why that is. I'll leave that for Jeremy someday. But yeah, it's very interesting. What did you just do?
I need to take my meds. I just wanted to.
We are so casual here.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, if you look at 500 years BC to 500 years AD, it sounds like a long time, but it's not.
No, it's not.
1,000 years.
Yeah.
So, obviously, I'm Catholic. I believe in Christ and Jesus.
Right.
So, that moment, I mean, even for today, we take our calendar from that event.
Yes.
So, for people that say there's no such thing, Jesus didn't exist, not that I want to get all religious, so something happened around that time for people all over the world. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Right.
I don't know if you agree with that. Maybe it's just me being silly, but...
No, I understand that. Yes, I understand that. And you're right. We still use a calendar based on the death of Christ. Science has started calling BC and AD a little bit different. Like CE, I think, is now what they say for AD. But yeah, that's pretty amazing. That's what we talked about, I think, one day when we were doing a podcast about pagans and pagan beliefs and Halloween, and how we still have so many leftover traditions from so long ago that have stuck around.
But it's like if you look at BC,
Yeah.
that counts down
Yes.
as well.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Anyway,
Isn't that strange?
well, I think it is. But
Yeah. I don't think that's a coincidence. I agree. All right. Um, I'm going to talk about, let's see. I think I'm going to talk about Greenland's Vikings.
ooh,
Yes. So everybody knows, right, that what happened with the explorers in Greenland and Iceland, that they're actually the exact opposite of their names, and that was trickery so that nobody would find it. They would, they wanted, they wanted Iceland. Um, it's literally the oldest joke in the book, which was pretty smart, I thought. According to the Icelandic sagas, Eric the Red led a fleet of 25 boats to colonize Greenland around 985 AD, not long after he was temporarily banished from Iceland for manslaughter. He set up two colonies, a large eastern settlement and a small western settlement. These Vikings herded goats, sheep, cattle. They built stone churches that are still there to this day. They hunted caribou and seals. They were thriving. For hundreds of years, their population was around 5,000 people, which isn't huge compared to some of these other cities that civilizations that went missing. But yet, when a missionary expedition arrived in 1721, intent on converting them to be Protestants, it found nothing but ruins. Archaeologists have since determined that the western settlement failed around 1400 AD, and that the eastern settlement was abandoned a few decades later. The onset of the Little Ice Age in the 14th century was probably the most contributing factor to that, because it clogged the route in and out of Greenland with sea ice, and it shortened their growing season on what was already marginal land. To make matters worse, the markets collapsed for the Viking Greenlanders' main export, which was walrus ivory. But nobody knows what it was that delivered the final blow to them. Some experts say that they simply packed up and returned to Iceland or Scandinavia, whereas others think that they probably starved to death and succumbed to the Black Plague or were exterminated by the Inuits, which had arrived in Greenland from Canada about 1200 AD. Inuits still live in Alaska. At any rate, the Vikings were far from alone in their failure. At least three other societies also perished in Greenland, including the Dorset, which for a brief time cohabited the island with both the Vikings and the Inuits. But they too have gone. It's not livable, people. They tricked you with the name. Um, that's pretty interesting.
yeah. I mean, the Vikings. I do find it quite fascinating with the Vikings. It's they were a strange lot, weren't they?
Yes, they were. I like the Vikings too. They had some interesting beliefs as far as religion goes and traditions, the way they viewed men. I like them. They were weird.
Four,
What?
four.
Thor? Oh,
Yeah,
Thor.
yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah. Duh. Of course.
who is
Yeah.
obviously, for anyone younger listening, is one of the Avengers. That's the same Thor we're talking about.
Yes, that's the Thor we're talking about. Um. Anyway, I hadn't realized that the Viking civilization had disappeared. Although, it makes sense. Anyway, do you have another one you want to talk about?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
This is one we were chatting about before, actually. The Assyrians.
Right.
Combining a strong military ethos with huge leaps in education, the Assyrians were a force to be reckoned with. Where were they? Iran and Syria. When did they exist? 2400 BC to 1300 AD. Strengths, they were technologically advanced iron weapons, and they had a big emphasis on education. Amazing fact, the Assyrians combined several zoos as one of their... What? Assyrians contained several zoos as one of their kings.
Zoos?
Zoos.
Like ZOO?
Yeah, with an S on the end.
I don't get it.
They were obsessed with animals. Oh, well, there you go.
Oh, okay.
Excuse me. The Assyrians shared an area of Mesopotamia, which is Iraq, Turkey, and Syria, with the Babylonians, but they could not have been more different. While in Babylon, the kingdom was ruled by the priesthood. The Assyrians were ruled by kings and generals. This allowed the Assyrians to become a much larger military power, and they were able to expand their empire considerably. The benefactors of this rich and fertile land on the arable and Nineveh plains, the Syrians amassed a huge population who gathered in their largest cities, Arabel, Ashner, and Nimrod.
Oh,
They
Nimrod. He's in the Bible.
they spoke Academia, and they were some of the first people to record writings on stone tablets and
Oh,
later on parchments and papyrus.
because it would have been a bitch writing on a stone tablet.
I know, yeah.
I would have said as little as possible.
Yeah. The Assyrians were pioneers of animal they domesticated animals. Basically, there you go.
Are you on the same antibiotic I'm on?
Something. Um, They were pioneers of pottery, controllable fire and iron smelting.
Oh,
It
wow.
was the latter technology that gave their military such a huge boost, fighting enemies armed with bronze.
Mm.
The stronger iron weapons allowed them to conquer the Hittitians, who were
Ouch.
roundly defeated at the Battle of Nimrah in 1245 BC. Assyrian policy for defeated powers was not to be incorporated into their people. Sorry, I apologize. Assyrians' policy for the defeated powers was not to incorporate their people into their national nation, but to deport them and assume so there would be no rebellion under their rule. So basically, that meant that it's similar to what we were talking about with the Romans.
Right.
The people that they defeated, wouldn't let them assimilate into their culture. They would send them away. so that they couldn't be a rebellion and
Right.
undermine their rule.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, that was pretty smart, don't you think? Why
Mm.
would you want them to join your army then, Romans?
Yeah.
You're arming people that you just took their land, their loved ones, everything they have. Here's a weapon.
The final Assyrian demise is shrouded in mystery, but it's believed they entered the Dark Ages in the 1300s after the constant wars between the Byzantine Empire. After
Hmm.
the empire crumbled, their civilization saw a mass influx of Jews and Arabs. The Assyrians were primarily Christian.
Oh, really?
After high taxes were put on their faith, they changed to Islam. This effectively ended the idea of being Assyrian, as Assyrians are ethnically distinct from both Arabs and Jews. They may they may be a contributing factor to their slip into relative obscurity. So basically, what he's saying there, they were mostly Christian, but basically it was cheaper to be a Muslim. So they thought,
So funny. Yeah, they're like, oh my god, these taxes though. What about Islam? Jeremy's brother claims to be Syrian, and it sounds to me like that's completely possible because they didn't go anywhere really. They just kind of assimilated in other places and changed their religion because it was so cheap.
I know,
Like,
crazy.
like, what about Buddhism? Was that expensive? Did they shop around at all? I'm a girl. I need to know these things. Um, okay, so this one is about the people who made the mounds in Missouri and how they disappeared. So this is the Cahokia, and thanks to the spread of corn cultivation from Mexico, indigenous villages began to pop up around 1,200 years ago in the fertile valleys of the American Southwest and Midwest. It was by far the largest of these, the Cahokia, located a few miles from present day St. Louis, Missouri. That's so interesting. I live by Missouri. I can drive there, which at its peak hosted a population of up to 20,000, which doesn't seem huge, but it was the exact ish same amount of people that were living in London at the time. So, surrounded by a high wooden stockade, their area, they surrounded it by a wooden stockade, which I would love. This inaugural U.S. city featured many plazas and at least 120 earthen mounds. They built these huge mounds, and nobody knows why. These just massive mounds, the largest of which is known as Monk's Mound, stands 100 feet tall and was built with 14 million baskets of soil. Yeah, like, but nobody knows why. They don't know if it was for religious reasons or keep yourself busy.
Yeah,
If was
maybe
it a
it's just
burial
bored.
ground? Yeah, they don't know if it was a burial ground. Here, I figured it out. It was the dirt that they took off the top of the mountains in
Yeah,
your missing civilization.
yeah.
Nobody.
Had to get
There you
rid of it
go.
somewhere.
You had to dump it somewhere. Meanwhile, just outside of their wall was a ring of red cedar posts, which was dubbed Woodhenge, and probably served as a solar calendar. The city was a natural trade hub because of its location near the Mississippi, Illinois, and Missouri rivers, and apparently thrived in the thousands and the 1100s, but allegedly started to decline around 1200 AD, right when A calamitous flood is known to have hit that area, and it was deserted for a very long time. Um, and by the time Columbus arrived, that dick, it was empty. In addition to the flood, researchers have also pointed to probably an overexploitation of their natural resources and political and social unrest, disease, the so-called Little Ice Age, and those probably contributed greatly to its downfall too. But these mounds, why have I not gone to see this? Put that on the list. That is so weird. It's just a weird thing to make, don't you think?
Yeah, they look like
Maybe,
snakes, don't they?
yes, they do. And maybe it was so they could be up high and see if anybody was going to invade them. If they had a huge fence around them, they had to see out somehow, right? So maybe
But
they put mounds around as a defense, as a lookout. Did anybody ask that? I don't know. Did they call me? No. I figured it out. Anyway, it's really
May-
weird that, like, you know, that, I don't know, that's just right there. There's a missing civilization, and they left behind these things.
maybe it was some kind of hierarchy thing. You were only allowed to walk on top of the mountains if the higher status you were,
Maybe.
the bigger the
That's a good
mound.
idea. There you go. Well, I have in the story that I have a personal example of a missing civilization. There is a very large mound that I will be talking about. And that is a religious ish. Um, I don't know. I don't even know what to call it. It's still today used for festivals and religious rites, and if you are not Native American, you can't walk there. It is one of the things you are told when you move into this place, this city. Do not, under any circumstances, walk on this. And I didn't want to push it because A, trespassing is bad. B, my house was haunted really badly and I didn't want to piss off anybody. So I'm like, I'm good. But anyway, do you have any more?
No, that's my last one.
Okay, well, I was gonna do one more, but I think I'm gonna do the one that I want to talk that about where I lived, so that we can wrap this up. Wrap it up. What do you think?
Yeah, because I've got people to see and things to do.
Well, of course you do. People to do and things to see. Because Rob, that beard is spectacular.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me tell you about a little place called Casa Grande, Arizona. And if you have been a long-time subscriber of this channel, you already know where I'm talking about because my son, who is also a co-host on these podcasts, but is in the throes of new parenthood, he still lives there. So Casa Grande, Arizona.
Casa Grande
There,
Domes.
Casa Grande Domes. Yes, if you guys like haunted things, please look through my channel. The Casa Grande Domes are very, very well known, and my son has gone there, and a very special, I was going to say member of my channel, well, a friend of ours, a friend of this channel, Brian, flew there from where he lives, and they did a ghost hunt in the Casa Grande Domes last year in October, during the 31 days of Halloween, by the way. Actually, I think it was the end of September, and I put it in the 31 days of Halloween. Whatever. Please go look that up. Casa Grande Domes. It's very interesting. They caught things there. It's very scary. And the point of the story is there is a Casa Grande, means big house. And in Casa Grande, there is ruins of what used to be a very large, abundant, thriving civilization. And I'm going to read about this, okay? The Great House, Casa Grande, and its surrounding compound, as it may have appeared around 1350 AD, is one of the largest prehistoric structures ever built in North America, and its purpose remains a mystery to this day. I've actually walked through this. They don't let you walk through it anymore. I've actually gotten to walk through okay, it is called the Casa Grande, this building, and it's also in Casa Grande. Okay, so we don't get confused. Archaeologists discovered the evidence that the ancestral Sonoran desert people who built the Casa Grande also developed wide-scale irrigation farming, extensive trade connections, which lasted over 1,000 years until about 1450 AD. Archaeologists call a site where there are earthen buildings, red on buff pottery, extensive canals. They call this area Hohokam. They um, they have, hold on a second, but it is not the name of a tribe or a people. So they call the area where they came from Hohokam. Um, but there are people who claim to be Hohokam Indians. And before anybody jumps on here, the people in this area prefer to be called Indians, which I have said before, but I will say it again. They do not prefer to be called Indigenous, Native American, original peoples. They prefer to be called Indians. They have a festival every year called the O'odham and they sell quote unquote Indian jewelry, Indian tacos, Indian blankets. So I'm not being insensitive. I was told that this is how we should refer to them. So I'm actually following wishes. Um, so, years of misunderstanding have confused the ancestors of the O'odham, which I told you the O'odham Tash is the festival, but they have O'odham tribe. So they've confused that the O'odhams, the Hopi, and the Zuni people with the name Hohokam. So they've claimed that those tribes were Hohokam. But like I said, people to this day, they're in that area, do refer to themselves as Hohokam. So I don't know. That's not up for me to say. They can refer to themselves as anything they choose. Um, but it's not a word in any of their languages, nor the name of a separate people. But it's not the name of a separate people, according to archaeologists, by the way. There was no written word left at all. So there really is no way of knowing what they were called. So there is no way of saying that there wasn't, it's not in their language, nor is it just an area. Okay? I'm going to tell that to the archaeologists. I'll call them out right after I get off the phone. The Casa Grande was abandoned around 1450 AD. Since the ancestral Sonoran desert people, apparently that's what they call them, who built it left no written language behind. The written historic accounts of the Casa Grande begin with the journal entries of Padre Eusebio Francisco Kino when he visited the ruins in 1694 in his description of the large ancient structure. And if you guys want to pause this and go look up the Casa Grande ruins, you'll see what this structure is. And like I said, it was much larger, but it has broken down over the years because they did let so many people go through for long decades, and touch it. And the minerals on our hands break down the clay. Anyway, in his description of the large ancient structure before him, he wrote the words Casa Grande, or the Great House, which is still used today. More became known about the ruins with the later visits of Lieutenant Colonel Juan Bautista de Anzas expedition in 1775 and the Brigadier General Stephen Watts Kearny's military detachment in 1846. Subsequent articles written about the Casa Grande increased public interest in the area. During the 1860s through the 1880s, more people began to visit the ruins with the arrival of the railroad line, which is 20 miles west. And you can, by the way, still get on an Amtrak train right there today. And connecting stagecoach routes that ran right through the Casa Grande. Casa Grande is halfway in between Phoenix and, oh my God, did I just do that? Tracy, get back to me. Why? How could I forget this? My brain cells are falling out. Okay, I have to look this up because it's ridiculous. Hold on. So talk about something, Rob. Tucson, thank you. Oh my
I'm
goodness.
just about to say that.
Phoenix and Tucson. Casa Grande is right in the middle. All right. Sorry about that. The resulting damage from souvenir hunting, graffiti, and outright vandalism raised serious concerns about the preservation of the Casa Grande. And if you live in Casa Grande, you call it Casa Grande, which is really irritating. It's Spanish, people. Casa Grande. Come on. Anthropologist and historian Adolf Vandelier visited the Casa Grande ruins in 1883 through 1884 and reported on its condition and the probable significance of it, disappearing. The Hemingway Southwestern Archaeological Expedition of 1887 through 1888, sponsored by Massachusetts philanthropist Mary Hemingway and led by anthropologist Frank H. Cushing, produced further information on the deterioration of the Casa Grande, and as a result, several influential Bostonians urged the Massachusetts Senator George F. Hoare to present a petition. I knew it. To present a petition before the U.S. Senate in 1889 requesting that the government take steps to repair and to protect these ruins. Repair work began the following year. In 1892, President Benjamin Harrison set aside 1 square mile of territory surrounding the Casa Grande ruins, which is really not enough. It's ridiculous, really, because it was so much bigger than that. And like across the street it's one of those things where I complain about how historical things are ruined because modern things are put right next to it. And this is one of those places. I don't enjoy that. And it wasn't enough to protect the whole area, but who cares? That was 100 years ago. And it was the first prehistorical and cultural reserve established in the United States. That's awesome. They've worked on it since then. They put a visitors building there. They erected a huge shelter over it to protect it from the sun, so the sun doesn't break it down. People from all over the world come to visit the Casa Grande ruins, and it's if you guys are ever in Arizona and you are driving between Phoenix and Tucson, or you would like a day trip out to Casa Grande, which is like a little over an hour from Phoenix, and it's a big enough city that I think it's got 50,000 people maybe. That you'll have there's a mall, there's movie theaters, there's things to do, but if you want to take a trip out here and see something prehistorical by prehistoric man in a civilization that completely disappeared off the face of the planet, go out there and see it, because it's really something amazing to see. And in the grand scheme of things, not that many people have been exposed to something that old built by man. In general, we don't reach those types of places that often, and it's very interesting. And like I was saying, they have a huge mound in Casa Grande, right next to like a baseball field, and right on the main drive. They have a fair right next to it every year, and they have the O'odham Festival, which is a huge festival in Casa Grande. It's surrounded by a bunch of different Indian tribes, reservations, and it's just a huge celebration of their history. And you are told when you move into Casa Grande, as someone who is not a member of an Indian tribe or heritage, you may not step on this mound. It is used for religious purposes. It is used for special ceremonies. You are not allowed to step on it. And I've never known anybody who has. Not even teenagers trying to be cool. I've never known anybody who's done it. It's really presented in that serious of a manner, that there are consequences and you don't want them. And anyway, if you guys also, so if you leave the Casa Grande ruins and go into Casa Grande, you will drive past that mound. And you can stop and look at that too. It's very important to the people in the area, and was probably used by the people who built the Casa Grande ruins as a place to perform their religious ceremonies. And I lived there. The area is so huge. I mean, like I told you, they saved a mile, but even into where I lived, when they dug up the area behind us to start building a new part of the neighborhood, they found, clay pots and bones and things that had been there from likely the people who had disappeared. So and David Spade lived there. David Spade lived in Casa Grande. If you care, I don't know. Anyway, so that is my story of my experience with a missing civilization.
Wow.
Hello. Isn't it neat though? I think it's just really, I love history. I love hauntings. This is a combination of both. Um, really is, really, really is. Like I lived in a house that nobody had ever lived in. We built it ourselves, and it was very haunted. So it seems so stereotypical, but it's interesting. I love history. I love that I got to touch it. I think a couple of years later, after we went through it and touched it, and I took my kids, they stopped people from being able to touch the walls anymore and going into it. And you could see how they looked out and could see if any other tribes were coming or if anybody was going to attack them. It was just really, I just love it. I just love to put my hands on stuff like that. There you go.
Well, you don't have a lot of places in America, do you, that of that sort of age?
No. No, we really don't. You have the blessing of living in an area, in a part of the world where you value tradition and buildings. Yeah. We don't really. We're a young country, for one thing. So we don't. Of course, we're not going to have anything that's nearly as old as you have. But we don't really seem to put much value on that type of history, and so there really isn't, bits and pieces around. But even then, I mean, it's going to be what, max 300 years old probably, and here this is prehistoric, so it's really interesting. All right, are you ready to go?
I am, yeah.
All right, you need to get some rest, Rob. I do as well. All right, everybody, if you have not already, please give this video a thumbs up. Please share this on all of your social media with anybody you think would be interested in this. We do missing people stories. We do missing people in national forest stories, which is a particular interest of mine. We do, um, I do creepypastas that I write myself. You won't find them anywhere else. I don't put them on the internet, so nobody else will narrate them. They are only here, and they're all written by me. Sometimes I do get guest writers, and of course, I always tell everybody if it's a guest writer that it is them. I give them full credit. So if anybody wants to submit a story for me to read, that is 100% something I'd be interested in doing. And I will obviously give you full credit. I don't want people taking credit for my stories. I want to take credit for yours. We have a really nice community here with a lot of people who have been here for a long time and who like to chat, and it's a lot of fun. And we do things like haunted houses for sale and with haunted things you can buy on eBay, and there's a lot. Go ahead and look through the playlists and the videos. I'm sure you'll find something. And if you know anybody who's interested in these types of things, paranormal activity, go ahead and send them on over here. I really appreciate it. And thank you for listening. And the 31 days of Halloween is coming up. And every day in October, there will be new content every day. So, the second annual, the year before that, I did every other day. So, I really, October is a lot of fun. A lot of different things. I'll be interviewing people. Um, my daughter's going to be going and exploring a haunted cemetery that she happens to live just a couple of houses down from, which is awesome. And of course, stories and podcasts, and it'll be a lot of fun. Please join us for that. All right, Rob.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not a problem.
And I will, obviously talk to you very soon.
Yep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.